start. But he looks like one. He's one of us.
I wondered that.
Genius. Okay, so we're just starting?
Yeah, we can start. Thank you guys for coming. Most of you have been here. Ilya, our leader, and he talked about the possibility of Ponomarev, and he will talk about the possible agreement with work, how it will work.
Okay, guys, thank you very much for coming. I understand the extreme weather conditions of today, and all the hazards that were associated with getting to the Capitol Hill tonight. It means that we have here a bit tough. But I know that we have a lot of people online who is watching us because there are a lot of people who are asking. Thank you very much. I would have forgotten about this. Yes, thank you very much. Tonight we will speak about what's going on in terms of the hypothetical, hopefully not so hypothetical, but nonetheless hypothetical peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine. And I would try to dive into the positions of all the participating parties, namely Ukraine, US, Russia, European Union, and try to analyze where everybody stands, what's really going on in the negotiations room. And I hope that I would speak not for such a long period of time, that we have more time for discussion, but anyway, I will try to go in depth. Because that's what I think people miss in the city a lot. So I would start from position of Ukraine. Ukrainian society is very resilient. They think, and that's a very fair way of thinking, is that they resisted for such a long period of time, that they showed a fantastic resilience, that nobody believed in the possibility for Ukraine to hold the lines for such a long period of time. For many, it was like a miracle. And that's why Ukrainian society, and I would stress that this is a society position, is determined to win. That's why all the concessions that could be made, they are extremely unpopular. Ukrainian society is not leaning towards any form of a compromise. There are a lot of different myths which are circulating the net that, okay, Ukrainians, they don't want to go to the military service, etc., etc. I will not say that's completely untrue, but it's at best is partially true, because a lot of Ukrainians, they came back to Ukraine to serve. When recently, I'm a bit affiliated with unmanned system forces group in Ukraine, the one that operates drones and stuff. And recently we announced recruitment of additional 15,000 people to the ranks of this new type of military forces in Ukraine. We got 15,000 applications in a week. And that's like volunteers. It's not a draft. And among this 15,000 application, approximately 10% were the people who left their military regiments before. So, like, they are searched for, like they are criminals in this sense because they left the military ranks. But Verkhovna Rada, the Ukrainian parliament, they announced amnesty for those who would come back voluntarily, and they are coming back voluntarily, and they are speaking openly. So okay, we didn't like our commanders. That's what we were talking about. Like, Ukraine is a very anarchic society. Everybody is making its own decisions. Okay, so they left their ordinary military ranks, but they are willing to rejoin the army if they are satisfied with what they do. It's not very good in terms of military discipline, but nevertheless, my point is that it's not a lack of determination to fight. It's a lack of certainty in the particular military groups. Additionally, what recently happened in Ukraine, that Ukraine de facto has achieved a complete arms independence from the Western supplies. If just 2 years ago, without the supplies of arms from the United States, from Europe, Ukraine would not be able to survive. Right now, the situation is totally different. More than 80% of casualties in the front lines are being made with Ukrainian-produced arms. Mainly drones, not only drones, but mainly with drones. But Ukraine right now produces also artillery for, which is coming from the West, right now accounts for less than 20%. Can put in the more production of our own military equipment. It's more efficient than to buy something, to bring something from the outside. Where Ukraine doesn't have much is in anti-missile defenses. That's where it is a big problem right now. And even there, Ukraine is right now producing more and more of counter-US equipment, which actually the West doesn't have. And because the large damage is being produced by Shahed-type drones, that's what Ukraine has its own means right now to fight with. And obviously, that's what many people understand. This number, this 80% of casualties being made with Ukrainian equipment, is that what all Ukrainians know. And that also adds to the feeling that we need to continue fighting, no compromises, that's what we need to do. Three key issues for Ukraine in terms of peace negotiations are territorial, I wouldn't like even use the word concessions, but the situation in terms of territory after any peace deal is made. Second is the position on NATO. And thirdly, security guarantees after a potential peace deal is reached. So what is in particular are those three positions? Firstly, Ukraine, for Ukraine, the easiest option in terms of territory would be to freeze the conflict along the existing front lines. That's the easiest because it does not have any political toll inside the country. Okay, we stand where is the natural division line between the two armies. Any kind of more complex exchanges, concessions, movements, firstly is being met with the feeling of distrust towards Russian side. Okay, if we even agree about certain land swaps, how it would be implemented in particular. Secondly, it's the question of what type of land we are to give up and what type of land we are going to get. For example, the maximum scenario that is being discussed at the moment is so-called the grant land swap, when Ukrainian gives up the rest of Donbas, but it receives in return Zaporizhia and Kherson regions. In terms of like square footage, Ukraine is to get 5 times more than it is to give up in Donbas. But psychologically, okay, we were fighting for this territory for such a long period of time, so how come we are giving it up without a fight? It's still our land. You are forcing us to exchange one piece of Ukrainian land for another piece of Ukrainian land. Is not fair. You know how we can do it. Secondly, the remaining part of Donbas is heavily fortified. You know how we can give up the land which is heavily fortified, and Ukrainians are ignoring that the Zaporizhia region is as heavily fortified by Russians right now as Donbas is fortified on Ukrainian side. That was the main reason why Ukrainians couldn't reclaim this territory during so-called Great Counteroffensive of 2023. But it's being ignored. But our land is fortified, and that attitude from the Ukrainian society limits the space for maneuver for Ukrainian leadership significantly. The second issue of NATO. For many years, the idea of joining NATO for Ukrainian society became an idea fix. So we need to do it because that's the only way how we can guarantee security for ourselves in the future. That is a military umbrella, nuclear arms, you know, United States, whatever. Right now, Ukraine starts to realize that maybe this type of security guarantees that Article 5, NATO Article 5, is to give is not absolute. That even Baltic states right now, they are wavering and they're saying that, you know, we are not so sure that actually the Article 5 would work if we are to face Russia's aggression in the future. So maybe it is about regional alliances. And right now the situation is that the Ukrainian army seems to be the most powerful military force in Europe. Many of the countries like Poland, Baltic states, they say, okay, so what we need right now is we need to organize tech transfer from Ukraine to us. We need to organize military transfer from Ukraine to us. They're starting to work with Ukrainian war veterans to deploy them along the front lines in their countries. So it's getting to the point when the Eastern European nations are actually turning for security guarantees from Ukraine towards them rather than the other way around. But at the same time, the issue of NATO is highly political because it's right now been written in the Ukrainian constitution. To change the constitution in Ukraine is relatively easy. It's not like to change the US constitution. You don't need to collect all the different votes alongside the country. It's enough to collect qualified majority in the Ukrainian parliament. But the thing is that Ukrainian parliament right now is the place where it is extremely hard to get qualified majority on anything because certain territories were annexed and there are vacant seats. After the war, one political faction, like pro-Russian faction, was kicked out of the parliament because they were charged with state treason. Some other deputies also resigned. Then there is an opposition, hardline opposition, which wants to do everything feasible to hurt Zelensky personally. It doesn't matter how it goes for the country. It's just a question of them hurting Zelensky, which has been led by Petro Poroshenko, the former president. So I personally don't see any feasible way how one can get a qualified vote to vote to eliminate the position that Ukraine is to be a part of NATO from Ukrainian constitution. So this issue becomes politically toxic, politically very difficult, and in the very essence of things, it doesn't make much of sense. And lastly, the question of security guarantees. In the situation when the West demonstrated that it's not about to enter any kind of large-scale military conflict with Russia, the most recent example right now in Europe is when Belgium is showing we need to face the reality in face. We are not going to win with Russia. We don't want to go at war with Russia. So don't try to confiscate Russian assets. Let them stay where they are. It's a very visible demonstration of the attitude in the NATO members, which are from Western Europe. Yeah, they understand the problem, but for them, the problem is not that important, but the risks that are associated with a conflict with Russia are paramount. And in this situation, to construct the security guarantees that would be working in any collective sense of this word, they look very artificial and not very realistic. Some of people in Ukraine, they understand this, but it's the best way how those who are fighting against the first two red lines, how they can speculate and prevent the peace deal from happening. Now, let's think about the Russia's approach to the issue. In many senses, it mirrors Ukrainian approach. They are also saying the same thing. Okay, land swap, we cannot do the land swap because of the fortified regions. NATO integration, we cannot leave the situation what it is, like de facto the West says we are not going to let Ukraine join the alliance because we all understand that there is no legally binding options how it can be done. Under this US president, maybe this agreement would be honored. Under the next one, it's not necessarily so. Ukraine is to keep, if Ukraine is to keep NATO within its constitution, so what we were fighting for. And as much as Zelensky feels pressure from so-called patriotic, national patriotic part of Ukrainian society, Putin feels a lot of pressure from so-called Z-patriots, the patriotic side of Russian society. And they also feel that, like, he's a traitor. A funny story. I was recently looking for an anthem song for Russian volunteer groups fighting in Ukraine. And one of the easiest way how to approach it is to look at different military songs and marches from other countries which were not yet translated into Russian. And I found one song which didn't seem to be translated into Russian before, which is called Florian Geyer Black Regiments. I encourage you to find this song in the network. It's actually a very song with a very interesting story, because the song was born during Luther Reformation and the Peasants' War in Europe of what it was, 17th century. So it was a people song for grassroots. Then this song was adopted as one of the revolutionary songs during the German Revolution in 1918, after the end of World War I. Then it was adopted by one of SS regiments during World War II, which was called Florian Geyer Regiment, and Florian Geyer was a knight who was leading the peasants' regiment, the rebels. And then after World War II, and that's you know, a miraculous evolution of the song, it became the anthem of Eastern Germany Army. So it was the song was like survived the revolution of 1918. It survived you know, Nazi period in Germany, and then it was adopted by Eastern Germans. Already in the Soviet times. So I was thinking, oh, that's a great song, and the song was like, you know, German way to express feelings. Like, we will kill everybody, we will squash them, you know, we'll put on fire all the buildings. It was very anti-church song, obviously, because it was a Reformation, so it was all these popes, you know, we will put them on our sticks, you know, we will kick off, you know, all their intestines, you know. It was like a very brutal song. And like all their wives, and we will rape all their daughters, and this kind of things. Then I was Googling, you know, who could use this song. And I found that this song actually was translated in 2022 by militia of Donetsk People Republic. So on the Russian side, like of these false rebels that are on the Russian side. And it was translated into Russian. And the words did not change much. But the meaning was that after this war would be over, and we will defeat Ukrainian Nazis, then we will come to Moscow, and that's how we will rape girlfriends of Russian oligarchs, and we put on fire their mansions on Rublevka, and then we will come to Kremlin, and then we will see who is right and wrong. You know, that was the meaning of, and that's very much the attitude of those people who are fighting at the front lines. And I didn't notice this song on YouTube. It had like 3 million viewers, so it's not like, it's not marginal at all. In this particular community, it's actually quite popular. And Putin cannot think about this. So for him, ending this war means he needs to end this war in the way when he is victorious. He cannot end this war in a way where it is a compromise. And that's why for him, ending this war along the division lines, along the current front line, it's not an option. Because despite that he like conquered a certain piece of land, still it means that this war was not victorious, that he could not conquer a single disputed territories of Ukraine. They all are conquered partially. That means that he was not successful. And that's why such an option cannot be accepted. He needs at least one territory, but where he has the complete control over this land. And that's why this demand for having full control over Donetsk region for him is essential. The question is what he can sacrifice as a compromise to achieve this objective. And during already Trump's term, they started negotiating this. During Witkov's visit in August, it was August 6th this year to Moscow, Dmitriev, looks like it was Dmitriev, but not Putin. I don't know this for sure, but I know that he received this message in Moscow that Putin is ready to give up Zaporizhia and Kherson in exchange of full control over Donetsk region. And that's what made President Trump so excited, because for him, it's the embodiment of the grand deal, of the real compromise, where Ukraine, like, again, in terms of square footage, is getting more that it has to give up. But at the same time, everybody is happy. Putin is happy. Putin is declaring his victory inside Russia. Ukrainian president can say, I returned more land then I had to give up. So it looks like a deal. And that's why Alaska summit happened. Because Trump was expecting Putin to repeat this offer. And after that, okay, meeting with Zelensky, and that's what Trump was ready to brutally push Zelensky this offer for taking. But it didn't happen. Nobel Prize, yes, everything. It didn't happen. He was very much disappointed. In his inner circle, he said a lot of bad words about Mr. Putin, that he didn't stay for a dinner, so he just left because it was a disappointment. So yes, what they discussed in Anchorage is the potential of the land swap. And that's why right now, when Lavrov is referring all the time to the spirit of Anchorage, yeah, the spirit in the direction of negotiations was set there, but the exact words were not pronounced. And it was a pause in the negotiations until this infamous Putin's call one day before Zelensky's visit, the call that was, as we know now, was advised by Steve Witkoff to Russians, and they took this this offer, and it was a brilliant move on behalf of Russians. And again, Putin said, okay, so that's what we were to discuss. Let's meet in Budapest and discuss. And then Trump was so much excited about the meeting. Let's do it. And he reversed on tomahawks and on other stuff. But smart Rubio said, okay, but we don't want to repeat the experience of Alaska. Let's at least get a confirmation that this is something that would be on the table, that this is something that we will be discussing, this grand deal. And they didn't get this confirmation, and that's how the sanctions against Lukoil and Rosneft arrived. It's like, we are not here to play games. Since then, no significant progress were made. And we are right now observing a major split inside the US administration. One group, which is Rubio and Kellogg, they are thinking in terms of a reasonable, manageable diplomatic process with the documents, with agreeing on a certain terms, with an organized process, with a managed process. Another group of businessmen, they're thinking about quick wins, about quick compromises, and without any account for public opinion. And they found their counterpart in Russia, which is Kirill Dmitriev. They're talking the same language, but still, because of the conflict that emerged after these 28 points were delivered, Trump already did not allow Witkoff to go by himself to Moscow. And that's why they went together with Kushner, because it needed to be somebody who delivers an independent opinion about what's going on. And right now, it is certain that it will be Kushner who will be writing the next set of proposals. He is assigned with this. This is confirmed on the Russian side. That's the Russian understanding that it will be Kushner who would be writing the next 28 points. No more Witkoff, no more Dmitriev, but it will be like somebody in between. What he would write, they just had a meeting with Ukraine. To my information, no significant progress was achieved during this meeting because of these 3 points that I mentioned before. The last thing to say is the position of Europeans. Europeans, firstly, they feel sidelined, quite obviously, and this is the result that European Union does not have a coherent foreign policy. They don't have something which is unified and enforceable among the member states. So they have 20, how many members right now? 28, right? Who is the big expert in this room? 28, I believe, members of the European Union. So they have 28 different foreign policies and not a one coherent policy. Which is the worst thing is that all Europeans at the back of their mind, they understand that the end of war in Ukraine means not the decrease of probability of war in Europe, but the increase of such probability. Because what we were saying earlier, Putin cannot stop. He cannot demobilize the army. He cannot convert his military-industrial complex to a peaceful track. He just simply cannot do it. He needs to get those people who are singing Black Guy song occupied. He needs to give them a new objective, and this objective is Eastern Europe. And that's what many people understand. So they would never admit it in public. They always would say a lot of nice things about peace and humanitarian purposes, you know, and a nice life and whatever. But they all understand that the longer Ukrainian army is fighting, the longer there is peace preserved in Europe with NATO and with other nations. And this is what dominates the back of people's mind, and that influences very much the current decisions that are being made there. So let me stop there for a starter. I have more things to say, but I hope that they would come as a response to your questions. Thank you. So. Please, once. Just take the mic, please.
Thank you, Ilya, for your talk. In turn, I just have some comment, and I want you to comment my comment. My general impression about this peaceful negotiations is that all sides, we have three sides, but it's just imitation. Putin just wants to take more time, and he behaves in the way he is inclined for something. But this is not true. Trump also looks like wants peace, but again, it is something. So probably Putin has some compromising things on Trump. I don't know, but from Trump's side, it's also less imitation, but imitation still. From Zelensky's side, he clearly understands that nobody wants, at least Putin, will not don't want to achieve peace. He clearly understands that he just imitates, and Zelensky just complying. Okay, you want us to negotiate? Okay, I'm coming here, I'm compliant. And this is just my opinion. So what is your comment on it?
No, frankly speaking, this is the moment where I disagree with what you said. I think that actually all three sides, they genuinely want to achieve something. And I would explain. Trump genuinely wants his Nobel Peace Prize. He doesn't care about Ukraine or Russia or like whatever, you know, he cares about himself, but that's the only way how he can achieve this. And that's why he is genuinely working and working hard and way harder than the previous administration on actually achieving a certain peace arrangement. The thing is that from one side, a very reasonable approach is the previous administration was a side of the conflict, a very weak one, you know, a traitors, treacherous, you know, unreliable, but nevertheless the side of the conflict. This administration tries to position itself as a neutral party, as the judge, as an arbiter in this conflict. It's not exactly so, because everybody understands that still it's more pro-Ukrainian. It's still there are vested interests in European security. It still is a part of NATO. So still, it's not fully neutral. But that's how Trump wants to sell itself and to speed up the negotiations process, using his position as this neutral arbiter. Then it comes to the position of two fighting parties. And as what I said, they both have their own objectives. Obviously, they both have their maximum objectives, what they want to achieve. Russia wants to control all of Ukraine. He wants, and I don't think it's about like physically occupying Ukraine. I think it's about, I'm just looking if the door is open, because it's like some cold coming from there. Yes. So I don't think that Russia actually wants to physically occupy Ukraine. And even from the very beginning, I think that Putin's idea was to actually conquer and get into Russia the so-called Novorossiya, this arc of regions from Odessa to Kharkiv. Then to provoke Eastern Europeans, namely Poland, Hungary, and Romania, to take control over certain western regions of Ukraine, so that he is not the only aggressor and not the only annexation party, so that certain regions would go to these Eastern European countries, and then put a puppet government in Kiev, so that would be like Belarus too. Most likely Medvedchuk, a certain territory which formally would be still Ukraine, but totally under control of Moscow. I think that was his original program, and it's theoretically it still exists. And he most likely keeps in mind the scenario when, okay, right now he stops at certain point, but Ukraine is in misery, and the energy infrastructure is almost destroyed, and people are suffering, and depopulation, and no outside financial aid, and then the pro-Russian president is coming, because the only rescue for Ukraine is to be friends with Russia, and then Russia would extend certain aid, certain help, and would establish its control over the country in that way. I think that's what Putin still has in mind, but that's long term. In the short run, he needs to become victorious, and he is not stupid. He is not an idiot. He understands that with military means in Donbass, he would have to fight for another 10 years before he conquers all of Donbass. That's what the angle of view from US and from Ukraine is totally different, because we think that situation is in strategic equilibrium. We think that it's so to say managed retreat. We trade territory for humongous human losses in the Russian army. These losses actually, in terms of land space, there were some researchers on this, they are higher than it was during World War II. So Russia has already spent more than 1 million lives in terms of dead and critically wounded people to conquer what they conquered so far. It is like tiny piece of land. Russia has lost more than 250,000 of people during this year alone, for less than 1% of Ukrainian territory. So Ukrainians, yes, they are retreating, they're retreating, but in this tempo, even the Donetsk region would not be occupied for another 10 years. It's, you know, we were not speaking about coming to Kyiv or to any other places. That's a tactics which actually is inherited from tactics of Kutuzov during the first Great Patriotic War of 1812 against Napoleon. You know, when Russia even gave up on Moscow. But ultimately defeated the Napoleon army because it had nowhere to go to. And this is the same thing that what Ukrainians are doing at the moment. So we never feel in Ukraine like we are in a grave danger. Yes, the situation is difficult, but it's not critical. And Putin understands that. So, okay, so he will win over Pokrovsk. Pokrovsk is what? It's here, I don't know. It's smaller than Lisburg, I don't know. You know, so it's a village. He is claiming like it is Moscow, you know, like it is a capital of something, you know. It is not. It is a very small settlement, Kupiansk or like whatever, you know. It's shameful even to speak about. And Putin understands all this. He's in the propaganda terms he does. But he understands that only diplomatic way is the way how he can occupy the rest of the territory. Obviously, he has another consideration. He is fighting the war of attrition, and you know, we have this known Russian joke: when you are running from the bear. With your friend, you don't need to run faster than a bear. You need to run faster than your friend, and that's what Putin thinks. That, you know, yeah, situation in Russia is far from being perfect. There are problems in the economy. There are problems with demographics. There are a lot of other social and other issues. But Ukraine is facing the same set of problems. So he is counting on the war fatigue in Europeans, and Europeans are actually financing the Ukrainian financial deficit. So he is counting that Europeans would get tired of this, that Ukrainian society would get tired of this, and that's what would happen before Russians would get tired of this. But I think that he is mistaken with this because what I said about Europeans, that Europeans understand that it's easier actually to give Ukraine some money. At the moment, yes, Ukraine is not to win, but at least it keeps everybody occupied and the war away from European territory. As soon as Ukraine collapses, that's an open invitation for Putin to come to Europe. But, you know, even if Ukraine wins, it's, you know, it could be a problem. But, you know, let keep things where they are. So, you know, I'm sorry for such a long answer, but I think that everybody is genuinely negotiating with probably exception of Europeans, you know, because as I said, like, I don't have much trust in Europeans for objective reasons, not because they are the bad people, but, you know, it's just like this. But I think that